Hey, I'm Vegon, this is Psychedelic Actualization. On this channel we talk about topics like self-realization, self-actualization and working with psychedelics to live a more authentic and fulfilling life. Today I want to talk about the phrase of being a slave to the work. I've heard this phrase from an ayahuasca facilitator, and we talked about the path of self-actualization and self-realization and combining that also with psychedelics and the path of dedicating yourself to this path of awakening to your true self. And he was like, yeah, I can't stop. Like I am a slave to the work. I'm under the spell of the work. I just can't stop doing it. And I was like, yeah, that deeply resonates with me. I feel like I am a slave to this work. I can't stop doing it. And now recently I've been going through some really tough times because this road of self-realization can get very uncomfortable at times. There's a story of Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche where he gave a talk to a bunch of people, they paid to see him, and then he was like, okay, who here is just starting his spiritual practice? And a bunch of people were kind of raising their hand. And then he's like, okay, I recommend to you that you take your money back and you leave that door and you are not even getting started on this horrendous, difficult path of self-realization. And then he's like, okay, but if you already started, it's best to finish because it's very hard to stop. So if you start, then go all the way. Kind of a funny story. And now, kind of walking this path for myself, I've realized, wow, there's a lot of impurities coming up. I recognize now my deepest fears. I'm facing the most uncomfortable parts of myself. These voices that we have in our heads. I recognized I have this deep core feeling of lack. This deep core voice of, you're not good enough. This feeling of unworthiness, of not feeling whole and complete. Because this path is kind of the journey to our wholeness, to our truth, to who we really are. And when we feel whole and complete, we can do that right here and right now. But on the path, we get kind of purified. We embark on this path of purification. Especially in psychedelic work, we can see that some of the events that are happening in our psychedelic experiences, at least for me, is kind of a process of purification. And sometimes it's just so hard to face that. And sometimes we just want to crumble up and look away and not look at it, not face it, because it's just too much to take on at times. But it is kind of this recommitment to the path. This being a slave to the work of like, what else is there to do? There's nothing else we can do. There's a beautiful quote by Chris Beige that I want to share with you from his book LSD and the Mind of the Universe about this topic of purification that we inevitably have to face on our path. He says, if the light is going to enter and stabilize inside our incarnate being, it must first heal that being. To become fully one with all that is, we must become one with ourselves. The experience of cosmic oneness forces to the surface all injuries to the self. Wherever we have been cramped or constricted by life in any of our incarnations, we are healed so that that light can enter our hearts and minds more completely and flow more freely to the hearts and minds of those around us. We must become the levels themselves. To do this, our smaller sense of self must cease to be the container of our experiences. It must die. Giving up everything is simply the price of inheriting everything else. And when we let that sink into our being, there is this inevitable suffering that comes by giving up everything we've thought to be true about ourselves, by everything we've constructed about our sense of self, if we want to go all the way on this path, and we are seeing ourselves as slaves to the work, we have to offer up all our impurities on this path. And I mean, what else is there to do? Ram Dass once said, he's like, I'm doing my practice because I'm doing my practice. There's literally nothing else I can do. If I will be enlightened or liberated in this lifetime or in the next 10,000, who cares? Like, I have nothing better to do than just to do the work and move towards that feeling of wholeness and completion and liberation. And especially in times when we face our unworthiness, this feeling, this deep-rooted feeling of lack and of not being lovable and not being connected to that love that is everywhere. That's where we kind of have to, at least for myself, I have to recommit myself to the path and go into a deeper dedication to that love of their work. Because there's no going back. I can't just look away anymore because I've seen the light, I've seen the potential, I've felt and experienced the wholeness and the completeness of the One. And now I feel just like there's literally nothing else to do but just to be dedicated to that path. To end this video, I want to share a poem by Alex Gray in his book Art Psalms, beautiful, beautiful little book, where he wrote, "Dedication to love. From the core of our hearts, we dedicate ourselves to the complete and full expression of love in all our activities and in all our relationships. Love is the soul's medicine, a refuge in our hearts, protecting us from utter despair. Finding compassion in the eyes of the beloved and the stranger gives us the courage to endure. May love sensitize us with care and wisdom. May love help heal the sickness and wounds of life. May love enable us to forgive and accept ourselves. May love enable us to forgive and accept each other. May love help us to overcome our cruelty and bitterness, our greed and jealousy, our ignorance and delusion. May love rule our hearts and minds, directing us to reach out, doing our best to benefit others, to heal suffering, to give gifts, to create beauty in the infinite network that is our world. A heart of loving kindness pours creative grace into the world, to alleviate pain and mend the heart net. To the healing art of love, we dedicate ourselves." Let us sit in that truth of silence and of love.